Hi everyone, welcome to Falk demo for July 2021. We have Scratchboard artist Heather Lara showing us her awesome works on of wildlife uh, wildlife artwork. So about Heather, yeah, usually we have artists from the who've done their education in fine arts, but Heather has done her education in biology, and she got interest in artwork while doing the illustrations in biology, and then she switched over to the full-time artist as a scratchboard artist. And so you can see that so in her work that every piece has a master status, and she pays a lot of attention to the detail in her works, and we can see that in each and every work. And I've seen many sketchboard artists, it's more of like black and white, but we see that that Heather's work has a lot of vibrant colors. So it really adds value to the wildlife work she does. Today, Heather will be showing her works to us, and also she will show some of the works in progress on some of the parts she'll be doing, and how she does the work. And then also, I think Heather, I'm not sure if Heather you have the presentation, or
I have, if I can just share my laptop screen, then I can pull up a few different pictures.
Yeah, sure.
And then I can play the video. I know I was supposed to send you a link. I apologize.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll do that. So we'll get started with the showing her work, and then we'll have the demo by her. And then Heather is open to any questions. I think Heather said she will ask the questions in the beginning what you all want to see, and then so that she can tweak the demo based on that. With that, over to you, Heather. So.
Okay, thanks. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in and ask. Scratchboard is a really slow, meticulous medium, and I can see that some of you might actually do really well in Scratchboard because there was some very meticulous work. It might be more frustrating for the painters who go with a more broad brush. I gravitated towards Scratchboard because I like to do really detailed work, and as I went through all the different mediums, my paintbrush was never small enough. I was getting down to the triple aught, the 6-aught paintbrushes, and I was trying to get every single little hair. And so for my primary tool, it's just an X-Acto knife, number 11, and you don't get a smaller tip than this. So let me play the video. I did a video of a board that took about 21 hours. That's a quick one for me. 21 hours down to 3 minutes. So I always tell my kids when they were little, when they wanted to show me something on YouTube, I would say, is it 3 minutes? Because I don't have time for longer than 3 minutes. So it's 21 hours down to 3 minutes. And it can look a little chaotic at times because I do jump around the board, but it shows beginning to finish of one picture. The work that I do now, I like to do large boards. So 2 feet by 3 feet is the biggest board that I do. And I can spend 300 or 400 hours on a piece, just one piece. So let me, let's see. Let me show the video. And
yeah.
Awesome.
Wow.
It
So-
became more ferocious in the last 1 minute.
Yeah, it gets worse before it gets better. Typically, it's a really slow process because I'll scratch through the entire board, maybe 25 times. So
How do you fill in the colors?
I add ink on top. So as I go, so I'll scratch a layer and then I'll add a layer of ink and then I'll scratch color, scratch, color, scratch, color. And sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. I put too much color in and I have to scratch it all out. Or the layering of the colors doesn't go quite right and I have to sort of lighten everything up again. Ink is not an easy medium to work with, especially colored ink, because it tends to be very vibrant and almost garish. So when you're working with ink and you're trying to get natural colors to, nature, you have to dull it down quite a bit. So I'm using just a regular, this is just, is that showing the right way for you?
Yeah.
Yes, we're able to read. Yes.
Drawing.
So it's backwards on my screen, so I can't, never sure. So this is just Kohinoor, Rapidograph ink. It's just a regular pen ink. And I have cyan, magenta, and yellow. I've had many art teachers tell me you can get all the colors of the rainbow from mixing paint, and I've never, just mixing the 3 colors, and I've never been able to do it. But with ink, you actually can make everything from cyan, magenta, and yellow. But I have a whole tray of, I've got an orange to save time. I've got a green, a couple different greens. I've got a darker blue, and then my burnt sienna and my raw sienna, those are always a great go-to color for animals. So I have these colors that I build on. And I use these little, the painters might recognize these. These are little cups that you can save your paint off of your palette. So I just fill these with, about halfway full of water, and then I drop in 5 to 10 drops of ink, and a little goes a long way. And I always have, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 of these lying around. Eventually the ink permanently colors and you kind of have to toss it and start again. So once I start actually scratching on a board, I'll actually show you the process of coloring. Sometimes the camera doesn't translate the color as well, just because it's so reflective. So I've been trying to get my light just right. And this is where an in-person demo just works better because you can see the color better. But there are all kinds of tools. So I'm gonna, let's see.
I have a quick question. You use ink, but could you use watercolor instead?
You can, but what happens is watercolor can kind of gum up the board a little bit. And what you want is to be able to scratch through whatever you colored. So unless you're using very, very, runny watercolor, I've never been able to use it. It ends up making the board too sticky and hard. Whereas the ink, being mostly water, once it dries, I can always scratch through it.
Are these temporary, the colors?
No, they're permanent.
They're permanent.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are rules that let's see, let me.
Could you use acrylic ink instead then? Or you're always using technical pen ink, correct?
I always use technical pen ink just because even acrylic ink will get sticky, and I'm putting so many layers on. So let me just, oh no, I don't want to do that. Sorry. So go back to me. I knew I was going to do that. I practiced this so many times and then I forget it right. So I have to switch camera. There we go.
Yeah, are we seeing
This is the one. Okay. And I have to close this out because it freezes. So let's, bring this back up. There we go. All right, bear with me just a sec. Okay. Now, does my hand in focus? And is it
Yeah, it is in focus. Yes.
is it lagging at all, or is it nice smooth movement?
It's lagging.
Slightly lagging.
No. So that's the problem with trying to share this screen. I found that it lags a little bit.
It's not too annoying, so it's really good.
So this is a board that is not fixable because of this. This is a big chunk taken out of the board.
Oh,
Mhm.
Yeah. So so
how
this
did that happen?
I can't remember anymore, but my work takes a beating generally. I have 2 teenagers now, but as they were growing up, I would take my work with me wherever I had to take the kids and work on it. They're competitive gymnasts, so I spent a lot of time at gyms, and I just sort of throw everything in a bag and take it with me. And it's possible that this one was a pig. I have 2 potbelly pigs get into my stuff sometimes. So
Can that be
also my-
salvaged by, can you like saw that edge off, or does
I
does
could
that
cut the
surface
edge.
break up when you try to do something like that?
yeah, so I could cut the edge, but if I've placed my image properly on the board,
Oh, that's true.
I'm not going to have a lot of room. I did not like the placement of this picture anyway, so I made it my practice board. But Scratchboard, this is Ampersand is the board that I use. Let me see. And it's just called Scratchboard. And this is a hardy backer, like a masonite backing. And then you can see this very fine white line here. That's how much clay I have before if I scratch through that clay and I hit the wood, I'm done. Your board's done. You can't, it's very, very difficult to come back from. And honestly, the times that I've tried to come back from it, it took so much time to save the picture that it would have been quicker if I'd just tossed it and started again. So very little clay. And then this is just a coating of black ink on top. So this board comes pre-inked, meaning it comes black and every scratch will be white. So this little guy is, this is my demo board now. Now, if you drop something on your board and you take a little nick out of it or a little chunk, Ampersand will send you a repairment clay, and it comes in a little tiny bottle, and it's just liquid kaolin clay, which is what the board's made out of, and you can apply it, wait for it to dry, sand it down. So small repairs can be fixed. Typically my corners are all busted just from dropping. And sometimes there's little chips taken out because I have a conure that likes to work with me and he likes to chew on my boards. So these are things that get covered up with a frame. But this one will not get covered up by a frame. So when I learned how to do Scratchboard in college, we learned on a cardboard Scratchboard called SD. And that was very, very fragile. And all of my oldest pieces have all hairline cracks in them now.
Oh, boy.
And we only did black and white on the Scratchboard, on the cardboard stuff, because you really couldn't get it wet. The nice thing about the Ampersand boards is that I can put this under the faucet, wait for it to dry 10, 15 minutes and start scratching again. So this is a good start. This is what the packaging looks like. This is a 3-pack of 5x7s. It runs about $7, I think. And I usually buy all my boards on like Blick Art, Dick Blick, but you can get these on Amazon now. So So this is a good start, 5x7. I don't recommend doing anything bigger until you decide that you like working on 5x7. My youngest is also very artistic, but she likes computer graphics. I gave her a 5x7 to work on, and that was about, she was about done with 5x7. 4 hours into it, she said, all right, this isn't fun anymore. So now this is the scratchboard without the black ink, and it's just called Clayboard. And this BORD, this is Ampersand's trademark name. So Ampersand Scratchboard is BORD, Ampersand Clayboard. Now this is where you can take anything, any color you want, color the whole thing and scratch through it. And I'll show you one piece that I did where I did that. But generally I prefer the black just because the pictures that I'm drawn to have dramatic lighting, and that works really well with the black background. So it just depends what you want to draw with it and what your preference is.
Do you use the same kind of ink to, like if you start with the Clayboard, then you use the technical pen ink to coat that too?
I always use the ink, yeah.
Okay.
And it's always watered down. There's times when I do need to make repairs to the boards. There's little nicks and scratches over time, especially when I'm, sometimes I'm working on these things for 6 months to a year, depending on how the picture goes. And, there's a lot of wear and tear that's going to hit a board over time. And so I will put small amounts of ink down, full strength, but anything bigger, it's just going to show. So this is a work in progress, and this is traditional black and white. And I've used a lot of different tools to do the different textures. So my main cat has, this is mostly with the X-Acto knife, but now I've used a couple different other tools for this. And one thing that's kind of neat, when we have a Scratchboard Society and we get together once a year for a show, and we do workshops at the show. And it's international clubs. So some years we're in other countries. We were in Australia in 2017. We were in Vancouver in 2012, and we're going to be in Niagara Falls. I think we're going to be just over the border this coming fall. So we get people from all over the world. They come, and when you get a whole bunch of Scratchboard artists together, you'll find that really anything you prefer, that's what you should scratch with, because there are some crazy things that people put together to scratch the boards, and that works for them. So for me, so this is a standard tool that Ampersand sells, and I like to keep my points very sharp, especially if I'm going to do many, many layers. If I start to really dig at my board, then I'm not going to get the layers that I need to get the realism. So this tool doesn't work for me because I need to be able to toss it and grab a new one. So I'll go through, on a big board, I'll probably go through 200 of these blades before I'm done.
Oh my
And
gosh.
they're pretty cheap. They're like pennies. I buy 100 packs. So this tool doesn't work great for me, but there's a lot of Scratchboard artists that don't do what I do and still have amazing work, and they actually prefer this. So I'm going to zoom in here and see if I can get, so you can see. And I'm barely scratching the surface. It's a little blurry. Can you see that okay?
Mhm.
I'm telling you, I had this camera figured out today, and no, it just
Yeah,
doesn't
it
work.
looks good.
So, and as I run my finger across it, you should not feel a gouge or a ridge or anything. It should feel flat, absolutely flat. So typically what happens when you first start Scratchboard is you scratch way too deep. And so if I really gouge the board, see all these little curly cues that pop up. Now, if I actually like run my fingernail across, my fingernail will go right into that groove. So you saw how much clay there is. It's not very, you don't have very far to go before you hit wood. So if you gouge like this, you're not going to get a lot out of your wood. And then if you want to actually cross it, can you hear that?
Yeah.
So this is not sustainable if you actually want to come up with a really fine art detailed. So if you find that you can actually feel the grooves, you're putting way too much pressure on the board. If I just lightly skim like this, let's go back up. Then I can cross hatch. And when I cross hatch, that's where I start to get my different textures. And most of the Scratchboard artists you see in our group, they're all realism artists. They do all different things. They do, some of the stuff they do is, you know, some people do people portraits, others do cars, and they can create a chrome bumper that looks like you could touch it and put a fingerprint in it. Other people do landscapes. I like animals. That's kind of my thing. But almost all of it is realism. We've had a couple new artists, which I find really exciting, that have joined the group that are more contemporary and have done more conceptual art. And it's really exciting because it just shows that this is a medium that if you have the patience to find the right tool for you and the right technique, you could do anything in this medium. So I'll send a link to the Scratchboard Society website so that you can check that out. So this is another Ampersand tool. This is a fiberglass brush. And that one doesn't want to work. Let's see. This one just sort of pulls off. Pulls off more ink a lot quicker. There's a fantastic artist, wildlife artist in Australia who he does all of his pictures with this big, I think this is a big clunky tool, but he does magic with it. He just does these big giant black and white pieces that are just so cool. So you know what's a great tool for some, and like the ones that I really have a struggle and have a hard time with, they're, you know, the tools that some people only use. So just because I only use a number 11 doesn't mean that's what you have to use. This is a smaller fiberglass tool. I do find more use in this one because it's a little more precision and I can control this one better. And this is actually, I get these little fiberglass rods on Amazon. And this is just called a Euro tool. Same thing, found it on Amazon. And I'll use this one for if I want to do, sometimes I'll do it if I'm working on an eye. The only thing with the fiberglass tool is if you are going to work in color, sometimes it's tricky to get the ink to color this after you've done it. It just seems to remove, it takes everything off so smoothly. So you can't layer color as easily with this, but And then, let's see.
When you're using the blade, then you said number 11 X-Acto blade. So how can you tell when it's time to change the blade? What does
When
it
I'm
do?
going, it starts to, if I, let me zoom out a little. Okay. If
I mean,
I drag this across my board, now I'm not putting any pressure. If the blade's sharp, it's going to leave a line. Once I have to actually start putting a little more pressure down, then my tip's getting dull. And then sometimes what'll happen is you'll get these little, it'll skip.
Huh.
And it's a feel. There's times when I'm, I'll sit at my easel for 14, 15 hours and I won't be paying attention. And before I know it, I'll realize that I'm actually putting a lot of pressure into my scratches. So it's something that you just have to learn the feel of. But when you find yourself really starting to put pressure and not being able to get that, smooth line, and it starts to stutter a little bit across the board, it's
So
time.
about how many hours would you estimate you get out of a given blade?
I would say maybe 3 or 4 hours.
Okay.
If I'm scratching consistently. And then there's also, here we go. There's if I'm working on a really big board with a really big animal, my scratches are going to be a lot bigger. Now, if I'm working on a small board like this, my scratches are going to be much smaller. So when my scratches are smaller and more controlled, the tip will last longer. When I'm doing a bigger board and I'm doing much bigger strokes, I'm gonna use the knife up quicker too. So it's really just a feel. And then there's some people that actually like sharpen their blade every,
Oh,
I
wow.
don't know, every 30 minutes. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that, and I'm not very good at it. I just end up ruining the blade. So, so this is it's a five prong tool, and let's see, you can see it. And this is another ampersand tool, and it's actually probably the closest thing to this would be a tattoo needle. Now this one will give you, and it's really hard to see this because the camera is not focusing real well, but this is giving me really teeny tiny lines. And this is a great texture tool also. So I'll use this when I'm trying to do rocks and I'm trying to loosen up a little bit. Sorry. Yeah. It's kind of hard to see it. But this tool, this one's got 5 prongs. And there's actually people in the group who, rather than this tool, which is $15, and then once it gets dented or, like if I drop my tools a lot, then they get crooked, the points get bent, and then there's no replacing this one. So, you're kind of done. So all the ampersand tools run about $15 a tool, which is why I prefer to use my own tools, because it's a lot more cost efficient. Their tools are way more expensive than their boards. And then this is my favorite tool. This is a ceramic blade. And again, I get the ceramic blades on Amazon, and the ceramic blades will give me a slightly fatter line. And it is a deeper cut into the board. So you do have to be careful, but when I'm doing finishing work, like whiskers on a cat, this is my whisker tool. So, so let me show you a couple works in progress. I'm gonna try and use the other camera here. Let's switch camera. no, there we go. Okay.
Do you always have a sharp tool, or are there any blunt tools?
Say that again.
Are there any blunt tools? Are they always sharp tools?
I would say that the ceramic is probably the bluntest tool I have,
Okay.
but it does still have a point.
Okay.
But again, it's and sometimes I use sandpaper or steel wool,
Uh-huh.
take off a broader area, but it's because I like detail.
Hmm.
So this is a finished work that I haven't sprayed yet. So when you're done with the work, you'll notice, do you see the shine on the board? There's shiny spots all over the board. And then there's sort of a halo all around the edges here. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, yeah.
That's the ink overlapping on the board.
There we can see it. Yeah.
So, and it's something like when you look at the picture dead on and you're getting good light and it's, it looks really nice, but then this is oil from my hand up here, all the way around, oils from my hand. So there's certain spots where I've sprayed with my airbrush. I like to use an airbrush and slightly watered down black ink to do like little repair works, little scratches here and there. And that will still leave this sheen. So before I'm ready to frame, I'm going to spray this with a fixative, and I just use Krylon matte, and I'll put maybe 8 or 10 coats of it on this. And by the time I'm done spraying it with the Krylon, all of that will sink in and it'll be like a deep matte black.
Mhm.
So it makes it a little difficult to photograph. I used to have somebody who did that professionally, but he retired, sold his big camera, and bought a restaurant. And the restaurant folded. This is a work in progress.
What is Heather, when you have time, please explain how you take the reference pictures also for these. You said you
Okay.
take.
So this is a little departure from my normal work. I went to Africa in 2019 and I went on a safari, and this is a photograph. This is a scene from my safari. And we actually watched a pride of lions take down this Cape buffalo, and an killer and eater. And then hyenas came in and scared the lions away and took over. And this scene is 9 hours later. This was all that was left of her. So all of these textures in here, these have all been done with different tools. Part of it's the fiberglass tool. Part of it is that little tattoo needle. And it's many, many, many layers. So I can actually feel bumps on the board, but I'm still not going deep into the board, because in order to get this, let's see if we can go close in. So all of this texture in here, this is all created with just lots of layers of scratching and coloring, scratching and coloring to get these layers.
It has so much details.
It's a lot of detail, and typically with boards like this, like with doing this kind of composition, it the animal itself comes very easily to me because it's just a number 11 and I'm doing all the hairs, whereas trying to come up with ways of getting all of this little detail in here and all these different textures, it's taken me many years to figure this out. And it's a little gruesome, but so all of this, just this texture in the bone.
Mm.
It's a lot of steel wool and fiberglass, and then just layers and layers and layers of ink. So you can get a lot of different textures out of a board, but it's going to take a little practice, a little trial and error. So I'm going to take my ink and I'm just going to show you. Let's zoom in. I'm upside down, aren't I?
Yeah, it's
Uh,
okay.
Yes, yes.
I'm upside down. Okay. Okay.
Now it's right, yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna, depending on what I want, how much of an area I want to color. So I've got a nice big fat brush. I've got this little medium one, and then I've got this little teeny tiny one.
What kind of brushes do you use?
I usually use watercolor brushes. I actually like the synthetic blend ones, just like the white.
And the ink gets cleaned with water itself, or you use some medium to clean it?
Just water.
Yes.
Yeah, just water. So, so I've got this is my little ink well. And the fun thing about ink is it looks one color in the ink well, and then it looks a different color when you put it on your board, and then it's a different color when it dries. So there's a little bit of a learning curve with ink. And this will take, you can see that it's wet. This will take just a couple minutes. But you can see just coloring the same spot over here, it's a lot lighter. And so this is that fiberglass brush. It's going to take a lot more layers of color. And sometimes I have to color it, wait for it to dry, put more on, wait for it to dry, put more on, wait for it to dry. And that's more of the patience aspect of Scratchboard, whereas you're not going to get the color you want right away. And if you get the color you want right away, after you put several more layers on, it's not going to be the right color anymore. So there's two things that are sort of have to change your thinking with Scratchboard. You're working in light lines and you're avoiding your dark. So that's completely different than if you're on, colored pencil on paper. You're going to color all of your color and you're going to avoid your light spots. Whereas Scratchboard, you're going to slowly work up to your light and you're going to avoid your dark. So that's a change of thinking. But then you also have to layer your color just right, which is why I always suggest that, do several black and white pieces before you do a color piece, because it helps to really get your thinking down. Just get the white to black, the black to white right before you, go for color. So. So this one's dry already. I can still feel it's a little damp, but so I wouldn't want to scratch through this just yet, because if I scratch through it, if the ink is wet, even the lightest scratch is going to pull off a lot of clay, and then you're going to ruin the surface of your board. So you want to make sure that it's completely dry before you add any color. And again, this is where, in-person instruction, you can see the colors a little bit better. But these are very, very light. They look light on the video and they're light here as well. Okay, let's try this. And that sheen you see, that shine, that's that sort of that overlap. The colored ink on the black will leave that to some extent, and that's what'll go away once you spray it. But you see how rich that color looks, and then this is how light it is on the board. So in order to get this rich color, I would have to put, 5 or 6 layers on. And typically with a very colorful board, when I'm done, I will have scratched all of the black off in layers, and I will have replaced it with color in layers. And that's how I get the vibrant color. Typically with what I see with scratchboard artists who try and do color too soon, they don't scratch enough layers and they leave a lot of black in there. And the more black you leave behind, the duller your color is going to be. So
When you're finished, do you use a fixative or a spray varnish or
use
something else?
yeah, so I use Krylon, just Krylon matte fixative. And I've tried a lot of different kinds of varnishes, and I think the majority of the people in the group have all settled on Krylon. Some like Krylon varnish, some like the gloss, some like high gloss, some like satin. But for me, the matte is the best one.
But it's just fixative. It's not a varnish.
Yeah, no, it's just fixative.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
think it.
Well, it's a UV. It's a UV fixative. So
Well, I was just thinking. I would think you'd need a varnish to really protect. Create a barrier over the surface to protect it from getting chipped or scratched any further.
yeah, that can be a problem over time. When I frame, I don't frame under glass, and because I started framing under glass, but even the most expensive gallery glass, it's going to have a little bit of a reflection. The really expensive gallery glass has a slight tint to it, so it's going to change the color. And these pictures, they just look better under light, and any glass is going to pick up that reflection. So my work does come with, a lot of instructions. Don't hang this in front of a big sunny window. Don't hang this in a corner where it's really dark. If you have a special light that you can put on it, don't put an incandescent bulb on it. Put something, I can't think of the word for it now.
Full spectrum.
No, I
Or
can't. I'm drawing a
daylight?
blank now.
Daylight bulb.
Daylight bulb.
Yeah, something that's just a little gentler.
Soft white.
Even those, they're still incandescent. I'm thinking of Christmas
LED?
lights. Yes, LED lights. LED lights will give you a nice, will pick up the shine on the piece very nicely, but it won't heat it up and it won't fade it. So my oldest client is 15 years and I haven't had any problems with those pictures. So so far so good. But I have had colleagues have problems with fading when they didn't use the Koh-i-Noor ink. So some like a pigmented ink. I don't like the pigmented ink. It tends to gum up really quickly when you're layering it. And Ampersand makes a little set, like a starter set of ink. And the Ampersand formula is based on Koh-i-Noor, but it's not the same. And so there's been a lot of problems with reds fading quickly on the Ampersand ink. So I always recommend that people use Koh-i-Noor. It's a little bit more expensive, but these, I have these bottles for years and years before I use them up because I'm only using drops at a time.
Question.
Yes.
So, so when you color it, does the color seep into the area where you're not scratched it?
Yeah,
Does
so
it-
everything I scratch, once I color over it, it sort of soaks up that ink a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And then when I go to scratch again, let's see. And then every time I do a new scratch, it's always going to be white.
Uh-huh. So it's not deep. The coloring is not very deep.
No, it's not at all. It's really just sitting right on top.
Okay.
And it has to be mostly water, because if I'm going to do this many layers of scratching, I can't have anything on top of the surface. I need to be able to cleanly scratch through it to get all those layers. So
One more question, like,
we'll bring this guy up.
do you go from the darker tone to the lighter tone, or what is the approach like to get the different layers of colors, like dark to light?
Okay, I think I know what you're asking, but tell me if I'm not answering your question, okay? So here is, I've already scratched this and colored this about 4 times.
Okay.
And now I'm starting on a 5th time. So every time I color, it's going to get a little darker. And every time I scratch, it's going to get a little bit lighter. And I'm going to scratch less and less of the areas. And the very last part that I'm going to scratch is going to be only the highlights. So I have to make sure to, once I get a color right and I'm happy with the texture that I've created, then I have to avoid that area. I have to avoid coloring it. I have to avoid scratching it, and only do the areas that I still need to work. But for the, it's difficult to show on camera, but for the hair, this is a small board. This is 8 by 10. And so I'm doing very small little strokes. And what I want to do is I want to slightly overlap my hairs every time. So you're always going to see the hairs underneath a little bit, and everything's going to, it's going to layer and layer and layer and layer. And that's what gives the fur that sort of realistic texture.
Heather, I have a question.
Oh, did I answer your question right?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I got it. It's like you keep on doing the same thing of applying the layers till you get the desired texture, right?
Yeah, and so that's the trick. That's another trick also, is I want to make sure that I have enough layers of scratching so that my texture's right. And then I want to do the color. But sometimes I need to scratch 5 more layers to get the texture and the color just right. And so sometimes it just needs to come together just right. But I've screwed these up so many times and pulled it back from the brink. My husband says it's my it's my process. I'll come in from my studio and I'll say, that's it, I ruined it. It's ruined. It's done. And he'll say, good, you're almost finished. Because I'll go back and I'll work at it and fix it. So it's a tightrope when you're trying to get like super detailed texture and color just right. But I've managed to pull so many more layers out of these boards than I thought was possible, given that I only have about a 0.5 millimeter of ink or clay, that as long as you're scratching lightly, you can get a lot out of the board. But once you scratch too much, you're not going to get those layers, and you're not going to be able to get, you're not going to be able to achieve the color you want. You're not going to be able to achieve the texture you want. Okay,
Can you still color the black? It's just a silly question.
Well, no, because what I want is just true black. So
Okay, I see.
I'm starting with true black, and I want to keep it at true black. But when you're doing an all black and white picture, then there are going to be a lot of different, like once you're talking about a bunch of different gray tones, you'll have that. But yeah, unless I'm actually going to go over the top with some other kind of paint once I'm done, which, you know, some people have done that too. That gets into more of the creative part of it, which I don't feel like I'm very creative. I feel like I'm more technical. So I like to have my reference photo and and all of my reference photos are mine. Every once in a while, I've used photos from other artists, other photographers, and kind of got bit in the butt about doing that a couple times. So if you can use your own photos, I highly recommend it. Or if you have, you know, a good friend that takes great photos and probably isn't going to be on Facebook lending out those photos to 30 other artists, that's a great resource also. But I had a girl who, great wildlife artist. She had a picture that I really wanted to do, and I wrote up a contract. I paid for the use of the picture, made sure that I did it all up. Every mention of the picture online has her name as the photographer that's part of it. So I always make sure that even though I have permission to use a photo, I always make sure that I give credit to the original artist, which would be the photographer. But she was young at the time, really young. So I think she was only 17 when I met her. And she let 20 other artists use the same picture. And one of the artists that used it was someone who went viral for it. And so now one of the best pieces I've ever done is a piece that, you know, a super famous artist that went viral doing the same picture. So even though I did it first, it kind of looks like I copied from a viral artist now. So, you know, those are the risks that you run using stuff that you find online. Stock websites are a great source, but I always recommend that you try and change stock photos. If I ever use stock photos, it's usually something that I choose for a background and not the main piece. Because again, a great stock photo is going to be found by a lot of other artists. So, yeah, I meant to add that in before, but I forgot. So, okay, what was somebody started to ask a question and we got sidetracked.
Heather, I was asking, does this picture live on this board? Because you said that this was damaged by either falling or something like that. Do you transfer the picture elsewhere or it just stays on this?
Nope, it's here. It's here for good. It's never going to go anywhere.
Okay.
I have several pictures that are relegated to the scrap pile. And but what I ended up doing was I ended up taking this picture because I didn't like the composition. I wanted it to be more the cat's face. And so I actually did the picture on a slightly different shaped board, a little bit bigger, and I cropped it much more. I cropped it better and I did it all over again. So this one is primarily just one that I practice on just to show, you know, the different ways of coloring. And so I'm going to put a little color on this one just to see if this works. And then I always have just regular old white paper towel. And this is a good way to see how your color is going to look. I'll set it up like this and I'll have them all open and I'll do a little tab. And then however it dries on the paper towel is pretty close to how it's going to look on your board. So, and when I'm doing, most of the time when I'm doing color on a board, I'm doing just big sloppy strokes. All of my details done with my knife.
So I have a question.
Mhm.
So when the ink goes out of your picture, does it leaves a mark, or it gets dried up and gets cleared by itself?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
So right now, when you put the color ink on the picture. It went a lot outside the.
Oh yeah,
your-
so all of this, remember when I was showing you the board and I was sort of tilting it and you
Yeah,
could
yeah.
see its sheen? This will have a halo of reflective ink sheen all on the outside
Okay.
when I'm done. And once I spray the fixative, it's going to settle all of that down.
Okay.
So I won't be able to show you like a finished sprayed board because still with all the reflections in the camera, it won't read right. But it's remarkable how, especially if I'm doing something in green almost shows opaque a little bit on top. And so what I will do is I'll take, I'll take my paper towel, I'll dip it in a little water, and I'll actually like rub the edges before I spray.
Okay.
And that'll take off the really, the thick stuff, but it's always going to be there no matter what. And then once you start with the fixative, and I just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Once I've sprayed one coat, I give it, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes to dry because the UV matte fixative by Krylon dries super fast. And then I'll take a microfiber cloth and I'll vigorously scrub it. And you'll feel almost like an orange peel texture to it because the spray sort of flies around and settles on the board. And that texture, if you're going to do lots of layers, that texture will, it can almost make your picture cloudy with too many layers. So it's important to really rub the board down vigorously in between each coat. But you'll see each coat that you put on, that shine will sink and it'll just go away altogether. Any oils or, over, like if I'm patching certain spots, all of those will sink once you put the fixative on.
Question.
Mhm.
If you have a subject which has lots of color variation, like a hummingbird,
Mhm.
in a small area, so how do you control your color so accurately? Because I see that the subject which you have chosen has a uniform color throughout his face, maybe
Yes.
different values of it, but so.
Yeah, so that's where your little teeny tiny paintbrush comes in.
Okay.
So this is a 5x7 board that I've mounted on. I'm going to zoom all the way out so you can see. So this is 5x7 board that I've mounted onto this black, just an 8x10, and then I've framed the 8x10. So it's actually a nice presentation if you have a board that's clean. I don't always have clean boards. So I can't always present it like this, but the small ones present nicely like this. And it also gives the impression of a bigger picture because, put a regular frame on top of that. But this is, so this is an example of, trying to get some really vibrant color. And let's move this down here. So I've gone in with each of these little spots and I've had to use my teeny tiny paintbrush and just individually paint these areas. And so I went back, I've actually gone back in this area. I've actually started scratching again because I decided I didn't like it. And so now I'm going back in and I'm adjusting it a little bit. But this blue is really difficult to, have pop. And so it's a very fine line between too many layers of ink and not enough layers of ink. But when I'm doing color work on a small board, I always have my teeny tiny paintbrush. And then I'm going to go in and just each individual area. This is not, it's not a medium for people who like to work quickly. Or if you're super, super perfectionist like me. So
for this kind of work, how long does it take for you, Heather?
For something small like this, I might be able to finish it in a week. bigger pieces. I have one piece that took, see, it's really, the camera just wants to keep focusing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think it has a lot more details than what we are seeing because it's just focus is going off and on.
Yeah, it's like, it is not sure what it's supposed to be focusing on. So let's see. Yeah, I have one picture that took me 8 years to finish.
Oh.
I'll show you this one. I'll show you that one. I'll show you the one that I did on let's do basic. And let's do desktop. All right, bear with me here and I'll pull this one up. Let's put this down. The picture started out as just a cat on a black board, and it's 3 feet tall, so it's big. And
36 inches.
and then I decided that I wanted to do a little background, because when I first started, it was all of my first works were just a big, brightly lit, dramatically lit animal on a black background. And, as an artist, you always want to evolve. And I had been getting, let's see, cloud. I'd been getting requests, for more background, and so this one.
Oh, wow.
My
Yeah.
God, so beautiful.
Oh my God.
You
Yeah.
must be a very
Wow.
patient woman, Heather.
That is stunning.
So
Wow.
So I'm gonna say 95% of this board was scratched 30 times at least.
Wow.
Oh my
And
God.
Amazing.
Please tell
each
me you
year-
won an award for that.
I did not win an award for this. It actually sold to, well, actually, I did come in second place in the master division for the show that I entered it in that year. And then what was crazy was I sold it.
Oh.
And
Oh, okay.
we very rarely sell big works at the shows. We'll sell a lot of small ones, but we very rarely sell big works. So you can see all the little droplets.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
Wow.
It's unbelievable.
So the cat was 6 months. Like I did the cat within 6 months. It was actually probably 60 hours, like coming back to it. And then it sat just the cat on a big black board for another year, put it in a corner. And then I decided to come back in and I wanted to do these big elephant leaves. So this one actually has 3 critters hidden in the picture. There's my little caterpillar.
A caterpillar too.
And then let's see, get a little frog. It's my little frog
Where's the frog?
right here.
Oh my
Oh.
God.
Oh my God.
You can see it better on the board. This was after I did all of my photo processing on the final art picture, I did lose some detail, and then it's got this little spider up here.
Oh, wow.
And these, the leaves came from 3 different pictures, and I actually get my best reference material for plants when I go to the zoo. Zoos have all kinds of great, trees, native trees for what the animals would need, and then just lush landscaping in general, just to make the whole place look more appealing. And so these came from, one reference. This came from a different reference. These came from, then I started to just like, well, maybe I'll just put a fern in here. Maybe I'll just do this. Maybe I'll just do that. But my background comes from science illustration. So that's how, those are the classes I took as part of my biology major. So one of the things that they sort of ingrain into you is biological accuracy. So if you're going to go through 8 years to do a picture like this, you want to have a plant that's actually where the cat comes from. You want to make sure the cat has the right amount of toes. You want to make sure that the markings are right on the animal. You want to make sure that, I researched frogs and caterpillars and spiders from that, you know, this is a cat from Asia. So these are all things that you want to consider. And an interesting thing about the reference photo is this cat was in a cat sanctuary in Central California. And when I got the reference photos of him, one of the keepers was in the cage with him. And he was like a giant, like, pussycat. Like he loved, you could tell he loved this keeper. And she was actually holding his tail. And this is a clouded leopard, and they have a long, thick tail that they actually almost use like prehensile, like, so like a monkey almost. They can't hang from it, obviously, but their tails don't wag up in the air. So I had this great reference photo, and I had to figure out how to place him just right in a picture that would explain why his tail's up in the air. So his tail's up in the air because, you know, it's caught in the foliage, or maybe he just jumped down from a tree. Like that was my thought. But all of these pieces, because I didn't plan the picture, I sort of did it in chunks. It took me 8 years.
It's beautiful.
Just beautiful.
Stunning.
I did not put the right price tag on it. Did not think it was going to sell. And then I had to give the gallery 40% of that not right price tag.
Oh my God.
Oh,
But I do, one of the reasons that I do try and get a professional photo of everything I do is that I sell prints from these, and I'll make way more money on the prints in the long run than I will on the original. So if you want to think farther down the line, always think you're going to want to go back to some of these older pictures. And, you know, when you do have an audience, or you do have collectors, they're going to be interested in older prints of things that were very popular, that were award winners, you know, whatever. And you always want to have that ability to go back. And the print industry has evolved so much over time that I have a 13 by 19 printer. It's a HP printer, and you know, it probably retails for about $900, but I got a refurbished one for $350 on Amazon, and I can print everything. I can print archival numbered prints from my own printer in my home, and it costs me pennies on what it would cost me to take the image to a printer and have a printer do it. So you could do prints on your own so easy and so cheaply.
mhm.
If you don't want to do something big, 13 by 19 is actually pretty big, because it'll be an 18 by 24 frame. That's pretty good size. But even just an 8 by 10, just a regular printer, whether it's Epson or HP, you want to make sure it has more than 3 kinds of ink. You want at least 6 colors. 8 colors is even better, but get some nice archival paper, and you can do all of this stuff right from your desktop. So this one is, let's see, Jimmy. This was the one and only picture that I did on a clayboard. So I actually airbrushed all around. I airbrushed all of this with, you know, different colors, color blue, green, taped off the square. Then I airbrushed inside the square black, and then I went and I scratched the cat just like I would on a normal scratchboard.
Love the eyes in this. There's so much details.
Beautiful.
Oh, and this is one of those things that I don't know how I did the eyes. I've never been able to repeat it, but I love it. I constantly go back to this picture and try and figure out what it is that I did with these, you know, to get that detail. But I started with a great photograph. I used to do macro shots in my backyard. We had great landscaping, and there was all kinds of bulbs that would come up once a year. And I would do these macro shots on the bulbs, and this guy, Jimmy, would follow me. And he would always, I would turn my camera down and take the picture of him, and his nose would be pointed up, and it would be, just sort of elongated and out of proportion, because it was just the way the camera captured him. And I have a camera with me all the time. I have a camera with me when I go on vacation. I have my camera. I go visit a zoo every time I go on a vacation anywhere. I visit a zoo or a wildlife sanctuary, and I have way more camera than I know what to do with. And Lightroom is a fantastic, we did have a photographer on here. He would probably know even better than me, but Lightroom is a great photo editing tool. If you didn't get quite what you wanted out of a photograph you took, you can make changes to it in Lightroom or even Adobe Elements, which are fairly inexpensive, and you can make changes to it to create the artwork that you want to create from your photo reference.
And being a biologist also helped you.
I think
I
so.
agree.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
the muscle structure, it's hard to get by even with a very good professional retoucher. You got to be knowing the skeleton work of an animal. You got to know where the muscles are, where all those things. That kind of beautifully worked done. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do really think you need to. For me, I have to know my subject. I don't do a lot of. Let's see. I don't do a lot of commissions because a lot of commissions come with extremely poor photos. And a lot of times people want a pet that's passed already. And so all I have to go on is a really poor photo. And if I'm working from a really poor photo, it's going to be a really poor picture. So if I ever do any kind of commission, I really like to meet the animal first, because it's the animals that I actually interact with that end up being the best picture. But it all comes from just a deep love of animals in general for me. If I tried to do a human portrait, it would be pretty gross. It would not be good. And one of the things I've found, I've done a lot of jurying art shows, and then I've done, as a master in the Scratchboard Society, one of my responsibilities is to participate at least every other year in jurying other members to work up to the next level. And I've seen it again and again where people hand in a portfolio of 10 images, and 8 of them will be remarkably bad. I mean, bad. And then 2 of them will be stunning. And it'll be a completely different subject matter. It'll be a completely different style. And I think some people don't realize what they're good at drawing. Some people are just really good at drawing things that they don't realize they are. And so I've found out over the years that I'm good at drawing animals, and so that's what I stick to. But some people just really good at people portraits, and they try and do a portfolio full of animals. And, when you look at that artwork from the perspective of a judge, and you see, colors off, forms off here, and then they've got this remarkable, stunning portrait of a person with every wrinkle and texture in the skin. And so knowing your gift is important, I think. This guy was an ambassador jaguar in the zoo in Belize. And they did this thing called the kiss of death. This is what they're always trying to, you're on vacation, they're always trying to hook you to go see something. And of course, I was on a trip with my girlfriends, and I said, well, we have to go to the zoo, because when I go somewhere, I have to go to the zoo. So they said, well, you have to go get the kiss of death. And the kiss of death is they take you into a cage inside the jaguar enclosure, and the jaguar licks your head.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
And I said, well, okay, absolutely. And what they didn't tell you was it can't really lick your head unless you're bald or you have a buzz cut, because his tongue's so scratchy that he could actually just like rip your hair out. But we didn't find out that we couldn't get the kiss of death until we were already in there. But they took us in this big, forested enclosure, and then there's this little cage inside the enclosure, and there's benches set up, and you get to sit in there. And then out comes Junior, and Junior is he is declawed, and he was a drug bust seizure. He was like a pet for a drug lord. And so he was remarkably tame because he had been this guy's pet, and he had already been declawed. And so he made a great animal ambassador. I mean, they still had a lot of precautions. We weren't allowed to pet him. We weren't allowed to do anything, but we were allowed to feed him like little chicken pieces. And he jumped up on the cage, and I took, close-up pictures of his feet and his paws. And but I try and make every photo an experience. And then when the experience and the photo come together. So the same thing goes if I see a picture of something that I just really I want to paint it so bad, and it's somebody else's photo. Sometimes those pictures, they just speak to your brain, or you have an idea in your head and you do want to use somebody else's photo. Ask them the story, because most photographers will have the story behind the photo. Why they took that picture. If it's an animal, they might have background on the animal. Make it more than just taking a photo and copying it.
A question.
Mhm.
Do you alter the lighting on your subject, or is it pretty much the same as your reference photographs?
It's almost always adjusted a little bit. When I first started out, using my own photos, I didn't really know how to adjust the camera. So it would be that, I'd shoot 1,000 pictures and I'd come up with like 20 great ones. I worked through a couple camera bodies, killing my shutter. Doing that. I'm better. I'm more disciplined now, a little bit. But I would find that great picture and then copy it. I would find that great picture among what I took, and then that's the one. Now I have a little more knowledge of light and just from experience. And so sometimes I will go in and I'll alter the pictures to make them a little bit more dramatic. I've been able to choose my own lighting source now, whereas 15 years ago, I didn't feel like a strong enough artist to really capture it correctly. But I found that I took 15,000 pictures in Africa, and I came out with about 1,500 good ones.
Wow.
So I'm going back to Africa next year, and I'm going to do better. I'm going to do better than 1,500 good ones out of 15,000. But there was something wrong with my lens before I left. I didn't realize it until I got back, and I took all the equipment in to be cleaned, and they said, yeah, there's something wrong with your lens. And so it wasn't quite focusing right, and I was getting a halo. So that was kind of a bummer, but I did, in Lightroom, I was able to bring back a lot of the pictures that I thought I lost. Lightroom has been a game changer for me.
And Srihasha will say the same. And expert in our group, Srihasha, whose picture you saw, he's a Lightroom expert.
Yeah, I'd like to take a class. I watch their tutorials like every chance I get. They have this this great tool on there where people share, the beginning, the original photo and what they, and then after they've adjusted it, and then they show all the steps that they took to get the photo right. And I've learned a lot from that, but I could really benefit from a class just to be able to learn all of the different tools. So there's so much available. But there was an amazing artist in Australia. Her name is Leslie, and she just her scratchboards were just beautiful. Like if you think mine are beautiful, like hers were 1,000 times more beautiful than mine. But she lived in a tiny town in Australia, and there was no source, there was no zoo, there was no source of animals. She didn't have the money to travel. So every single photo reference she used came from Facebook somewhere. And there's situations like that. Not everybody's able to travel. Not everybody's able to, take the time and go to a zoo. So there's a lot of conversations online about, it's not your art if you use somebody else's photograph. That's plagiarism. I mean, there's very extreme sides of the conversation. And I take a look at Leslie's work and I think, you know what, there isn't an artist on this planet that could take the photos that she used and do the work that she did. So she passed from cancer a couple of years ago, but we had a lot of conversations about that because it bothered her that, that she wasn't able to go and get her own photos. And I choose to use my photos because now I'm actually getting photos that I can use and get something out of. But there's still times when I see a really good one. And I have a couple of friends who are, good animal photographers that, I'm the only one they let use their work. So making those connections on social media really helps.
Heather, I have a question. Since you are a judge, you have juried art. So what is your opinion, when people, everybody of course can take their own pictures, but to compose your picture, or do you really, what is the best thing? Is it right to copy it totally and then show it as your own, or or you can change it a little bit and then you do it as your own?
No, I think if you have permission to use somebody's photo, you have permission to copy it 100%. Again, I don't think, let me use this example. So when I didn't go into prepping my boards, like how I start my boards, and my husband is completely covered in head to toe in a suit. He's about to go under the house. Sorry, that was funny. I trace my image. I take my photo and I tape it to the board. I chalk up the back of it and I trace the outline of the image on my board. And so some people will say, well, I never create artwork without making a grid. I make a grid and I draw it from hand. And, if you're tracing it, like anybody could trace that, but I don't think so. I don't think anybody could trace an image of this jaguar on a board and do what I did. So does it make my work less because I traced an outline to start? So I feel the same way about a photograph. You're using it, you have permission. That's the most important part. Always offer up the artist's, the original photographer's name. That's the second most important part. You use somebody's photo, say, thank you to so-and-so for giving me permission to use this photo. So always give credit to the original photographer. But once you have permission, use every speck of that photo. Use what made you draw. If something drew you to that photo in the first place, use every element that drew you to that photo. I call it like makes my brain itch. When I see a really great photo, I'll see something in my camera view site. I'll see something as I drive by on a roadside, and I capture an image in my head, and I think, oh, I want to draw that. I really want to draw that. And when we're doing judging shows, we don't ask reference material. So,
Heather, I think we are out of time. Sorry, so I think we need to close in maybe 1 minute or so. Yeah, and also we have to announce the artist of the month winner. So yeah, so we'll continue, but I just wanted to give you the time. So yeah.
Oh no, and you all have give out my email, and if anybody has questions, then, you know, just feel free to email me and I'll respond to them as quickly as possible. And, you know, just, you know, start out with a $7 board and an X-Acto knife and go from there and see what you think. You might pick up the material and say, oh my God, this is so hard. And then, you know, some of you who did a little more detailed work might really like it.
Thank you, Heather.
Yeah.
That's very inspirational. Yeah.
Very nice, Heather. Very nice demo and awesome works. I don't think we have seen this kind of such a detailed artwork in Scratchboard before. So, thank you for showing us the demo and also showing your works. I wish we could see the previous one in person. I think you said you already sold it. So,
Yeah, I sold it.
Yeah. Good.
It's in Texas somewhere.
Oh, is it? Okay. Very nice. We look forward to seeing more works from you. So we'll be in touch. We'll look at your website and then also contact you for any Juridin show so that you can come and see our works here. So.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So much.
Good.
Heather, where are you located?
I am in Temecula. I'm in Southern California. So I'm
Okay.